Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Thank you, colleagues who are seated around this table. To the people of Roxborough, Argyle, Dallaford, Kendall. Love from the House of the Tobago Assembly. Madam Presiding Officer, I came here, like Charles Dickens once said, with great expectations. As I listened, my fellow colleague on the other side spoke of self-determination. I became more puzzled, and I asked myself whether or not he was prepared for this debate. This debate is one that seeks to present or represent the urgency of Tobago's desire to manage its own affairs. And so I question the word autonomy. Autonomy has a specific meaning. It means some of your rights, not all of your rights. It means that someone has to give you rights. That's what autonomy means. Autonomy is one form of three political status. Yeah, it's one. What Tobago desires, as I wish to have entrenched in the Hansard this afternoon, is self-determination, which is, according to United Nations Charter 1514, is a fundamental human right, which is a fundamental part of international law. We are talking international law. We are not talking about any gift to be given to us from anybody in Trinidad. Tobago is demanding today, this evening, its full, unencumbered right to self-determination. I want to say that that right has also been repeated in the International Covenant of Civil and Political Covenant of 1966. It has also been further repeated again in the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. All these are international groups, 1966. Both international covenants on rights are quite clear. They speak of self-determination as legally binding upon all the signatories. Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory of those two international covenants. I wish to repeat, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Check it up. And the next one, the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Check it up. Those are rights that belong to both Trinidad and Tobago, which is a right to pursue its self-determination. It says all people have the right to self-determination. All peoples have the right to self-determination. This is not for the people in blue. This is not for the people in red. This is not even for the people in green. This is for the people of Tobago to decide. So the question is autonomy a legal principle rooted in international law? No. Autonomy is not a legal principle at all. There's no legal basis for autonomy. None. That's a choice the people or the peoples of any country must make. So to come to us this evening and brandish autonomy as if we have different options is disingenuous, to use my colleague's word, and it does not measure up to the expectations of Tobago. What Tobago desires is this: that under the right of self-determination, we, the peoples of Tobago, will decide for ourselves, among ourselves, without any external influence. Yeah? Our own political status. Madam Presiding Officer, when I speak of political status, I speak of three fundamental things. Three fundamental things. One of it is the right of Tobagonians to be a sovereign nation by itself. That must be considered. It must be discussed among the people of Tobago. Then we have to look at an autonomous relationship, whether the people of Tobago want to be in an interdependent relationship with Trinidad. That's autonomy. And the third one, whether the people of Tobago want to freely be a part of an association with Trinidad via some treaty that we all agree on. That's what self-determination speaks to. The Montevideo Convention of 1933 is not, while not a United Nations treaty, it defines the criteria that Tobago seeks. It says, in order for a nation to have statehood, you must have a permanent population, a defined territory, a government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. Tobago has that capacity. So we therefore can consider whether we want to be a sovereign nation with our own constitution, our own money, our own flag. That's up for discussions. Let me go a little deeper with this stuff. The idea of autonomy in this day and age is a betrayal of the intelligence of our people. We have gone past 1970-something. Yes, 1970-something. We have gone past that period. We have gone past 1996 with Act 40. We have gone past that. We are now in 2025. And every single person in Tobago must have a say on their self-determination. Every single person. Every single person. The man with the 1 foot, granny with the 1 bunch of banana, yeah? Even the person who's on the hospital suffering from bronchitis, yes? The little child who could hardly read and write, but grappling, catching crab, these persons have a right to say. And the only way for us to have a right in that, a couple of changes must be made. One, we have to create a bill within this House called a Tobago Self-Determination Bill. We have to produce that. Under Section 29 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, it speaks of assembly laws. Yes? And I heard the Honorable Chief Secretary on the other side spoke of one of the former Honorable Chief Secretary, Mr. Over London, presenting a bill here for Tobago's self-government or something to that effect. And I even recall in 2018, also under the Honorable former Chief Secretary, Mr. Kelvin Charles, and we discussed also to creating a group here that will further pursue the autonomy bill or something to that effect for Tobago. The words keep changing. But let me hasten to say, Madam Presiding Officer, once something as this that is very radical insofar as it has been entrenched into the Constitution and can't change in a hurry, everybody needs to be involved. And so with this bill that we should have coming to the House should have been prepared and brought here, and we discuss the framework by which Tobagonians would exercise their right to self-determination. Some of the things that should be included in the draft bill we are considering today, we should be considering today, should have been what we'll call, let me get it right here, a commission that deals with referendum, a Tobago Referendum Commission. We should have been looking at something like that. What that does, it says that commission will prepare documents and etc. to go out in the communities and educate people, every single body, videos, storybooks, every single thing. That's their responsibility, all right? And that should be done between the minority leader and the chief secretary or the executive, whatever the case may be. They come up with a commission that is bipartisan, and they go in the highways and the byways, and they ensure that everyone is aware of what self-determination is, what the options are that needs to be done. Yeah, a Tobago referendum commission. In addition to the Tobago self-determination bill, which should be giving us, all of Tobago, a particular timeline, I say about 3 years, because you can't rush this thing, Tobago are filled of sayings. One of the sayings in Tobago is that hurry birds just fly past the nest. And our next one says, hurry birds do build good nests. I'm hearing my colleagues saying that they have a referendum, they have some consultation before and this and that. Listen to me, there's no such thing as too much consultation. There's no such thing as that. I came from the trade union movement, and one of the things that we are known for is having consultation. You must have consultation, but more than consultation, you must have actions also too. And so what the bill that should have been brought here should have been speaking about is a timeline by which we all would have had a direct process, knowing that today we discuss the bill, tomorrow it goes down to Trinidad, but what the bill actually does is it sets before Tobago a 3-year timeline by which we will have a referendum. Now currently, the Constitution does not provide for a referendum. And so in addition to that, we should have a constitutional amendment to the Constitution that allows for referendums to be had in Trinidad and Tobago on issues of a particular nature, and particularly this issue. Yeah? It's a big issue, Madam Presiding Officer. This is not a jokey issue, as some of my colleagues are making it out to be a hype issue, where you go down and say, well, we want more legislative and regulatory rights on some issues in the 5th schedule. But even in saying you want more legislative and regulatory rights on some of the 5th schedule items, my colleague failed to say what those 5th schedule items are. He failed to elaborate on that. You have not. He gave some ideas that didn't match up at all, right? We have to be careful with this, Madam Presiding Officer. Once we have gotten in on the Constitution making way for a referendum, then Tobago now is ready within a 3-year period to conduct a referendum whereby persons in Tobago will have the right to choose whether they want a sovereign state, whether they want to have autonomy, or whether they want to have an association, a free association with Trinidad under a treaty, meaning that we are not obligated to this association. We are doing so freely on our own terms that are mutually beneficial to both countries, hence the treaty. Unless we do that, we are selling Tobago short. And there is no kind of a fancy conversation here this evening that will give us the satisfaction that the labor of APT James, well, James Bigart, APT James, E.N.R. Robinson, and Ochai Charles and the likes, those labors would have gone in vain if we do not take it a notch higher, Madam Presiding Officer. Madam Presiding Officer, let me set out a few things here for you this evening. Again, the right to self-determination is a fundamental right. We were born with that right. Under international law, it says any nation that was held in subjugation to a colonial power have that right to self-determination. My colleague on the next side knows chapter, he does not know verse. But in 1887, when the Trinidad and Tobago Act was formed, it was formed in England, in the Parliament in England, by Queen Victoria. And Queen Victoria had Trinidad as a colony, crown colony rule, and she had Tobago as crown colony rule. Because whereas in 1769, Tobago had what we call the old representative system, where we elected 15 assemblymen, based on those persons 21 years and over. that ended the day that my forefathers, my uncles and grandpa from way back when they stood up to the colonial system and they fought against Corporal Belmana. And that riot erupted in 1876 from May 1st to May 5th, where they had to send in Barbados for a naval fleet to come and quash the riot. That was a momentous occasion. I heard that from my grandfather and father coming down the line. It was a momentous occasion, a turning point in the history of Tobago. And 3 months after that Belmana riot, the Queen, by an order of the British Parliament, would have moved to remove the executive powers from the Tobago House of Assembly. Yes, the Tobago House of Assembly almost operated independently of Trinidad, well, totally independent of Trinidad or any Caribbean country. It had its own constitution. And in that constitution, the Tobago House of Assembly had full executive powers to make laws, to impose taxes, to hire and fire and make whatever it wanted to do. But in August of 1876, the Queen revoked the executive powers. And from that day to now, Tobagonians have been without executive powers. What we got in 1980 is a measure of executive powers that was further strengthened in 1996. But today we're not asking for a measure of powers. Today we are asking for all of our powers, and I say that as a representative of Tobago House of Assembly. Tobagonians are asking for all of their powers so they can decide. They can self-determine. They must decide whether they want to be independent from Trinidad and any Caribbean country, whether they want to have a free association, or whether they want to have an autonomous relationship. That is our right. We have never exercised that right. In 1887, when Queen Victoria claimed that Tobago desired and Trinidad consented to form a union called Trinidad and Tobago, that was illegal because Tobago did not have a House of Assembly that was free. The House of Assembly then was under colonial rule. What that simply means is, as the boss in England, what you say to discuss is discussed, and whatever point you say to arrive at, they arrived at. And in 1898, that was the final nail in the coffin, when the order of British Parliament again, the Queen decided with a few members of the Privy Council that having formed Trinidad and Tobago, Tobago will be excised from the Trinidad and Tobago nation and be made as a ward of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Presiding Officer, that is an oxymoron. That is a legal conundrum. That is mind-boggling. It is just not right to have Trinidad and Tobago as a nation. Then you move to excise Tobago from Trinidad and Tobago and make it a ward of Trinidad and Tobago. It just doesn't add up. That's what happened in 1898. And so what we should be doing today is correcting that. That's what we're here to do. We are here to correct that. Tobago being a ward means that Tobago has nothing of its own. There's nothing that Tobago produces. Everything that we produce is from Trinidad. Every single thing. Every single thing. There was a time when we had Tobago peas. Remember that? We had Brown Betty, Pretty Betty, and different types of stuff. Today, the Tobago peas have no Brown Betty, no Pretty Betty at all. None. None. There was a time when Tobago produced Bene. And I remember going with my parents to the garden, and they will see stall stalks with Bene, and they'll bring them home, and they will shake them, and they will come out, and etc. Today, we are importing sesame seed, selling it as Bene balls. That is wrong. Wrong marketing. Today, Tobagonians don't even have flour here. So when they say a hike on flour prices in Trinidad, we pay a hike across here for it. We can't even make soap. We can't even make toilet paper. The 3 Pooms matches comes from Trinidad. So we have not been allowed to develop. One of the prerequisites for self-determination, based on the United Nations, etc., is that the colonial masters ought to have built up the colonies to a point where they can take off. But the Trinidad and Tobago government has ensured that Tobago has not developed. And so they oftentimes ask a question to keep you in check and say, what do you all have? The truth is we have nothing. We have not one single thing. Even to have feed for your goat, now we have to send for goat feed in Trinidad. Feed for animals come from Trinidad. We're not producing feed here. Long time you used to pass through Roxborough, our guy, they have plenty acres with mango, orange, shaddock, all of these things. All has been cut down. The cocoa, whatever, cut down. The coffee beans were growing, cut down. We have been made to suffer so we could continue being a ward. And I was excited to come here today and debate this. I thought that we would have gotten something of substance. But in truth and in fact, we got nothing whatsoever. We got hot air, styrofoam conversation. Let me go back to what is written. He says the people of Tobago have consistently pursued autonomy to manage your own affairs more effectively. No. The people of Tobago continuously pursued self-determination. They want to determine things for themselves. And the first beat resolve states that the government, through the Attorney General and Chief Parliamentary Council, work together with the TH. What is that again? That the government, through the Attorney General and the Chief Parliamentary Council, work with. So who is the boss here? Who's really the boss? Madam Presiding Officer, this thing makes me sick to my stomach. How could we be piloting Tobago's right to self-determination, and we are taking up a thing wholesale, drop it in Trinidad lap, and say the AG and the Chief Parliamentary Council will pilot this for us? Nonsense. And I wonder if people are walking on their heads or they are walking on their feet. Because if you're walking on your feet and your head is the highest part of your body, your thoughts will be high, not low. How could they drop Tobago to that point? And Tobago House of Assembly will assist them. It's right here. It's right here in the bill. You think it's vexatious? How could the Attorney General and the Chief Parliamentary Council, it's written here, how could they work with the THA to expand its legislative and regulatory authority over key areas of the fifth schedule? What are those key areas? What are those key areas? He should have come here prepared. And in his first opening debate, we should have heard what those key areas are. But instead, he gave us all kind of a debate plot, a old cockroach paper, saying, oh, how. So to what extent? This is theatrics. You get this in drama school. This is not a theater. This is a legislative house, a house where laws are passed. But that's what those on that side tune out. As the kind of people listen to Parliament to discuss things. As a legislator in this house, I want to say, I'm disturbed. I'm disturbed. I never taught them that on that side. Never taught them that. Never taught them that at all. Now I read again with contempt. Be it further resolved that the government, through the Attorney General and the Chief Parliamentary Council, work with the THA to expand legislative and regulatory authority over key areas in the fifth schedule. Nonsense. Let's come a little further. And be it further resolved that the government review all previous versions of autonomy bills with input from the THA. Are we giving the power to the government to just include us? Or are we saying that we are going to review the bills here in the THA? We will decide the legislative and regulatory framework that we want or control that we want in Tobago. And we are going to put those things in writing and then send it on to Trinidad and say we want that. That's not being done. He's giving the power to those in Trinidad and say, all I invite you here, Madam Presiding Officer, I must confess,
Member, you have 5 minutes.
Yes, I must confess, Madam Presiding Officer, in one incarnation, to use Shakespeare words, when I was green in judgment, I attempted to do something like that. I attempted to give somebody the responsibility and say, include me. You know what that person did? You know what they did? You know what the person did, Madam Presiding Officer? They are here, and they are hearing me. They know what they did. They know what they did, and the record will show what they did in time to come. And so, they are saying to review all of these bills is the work of Trinidad, and Trinidad will include them. We don't want that. These bills must be reviewed right here in this house, and we must send our information down to Trinidad. Finally, they place a rule upon the Chief Secretary here to transmit this motion with supporting paper to the Prime Minister. The Tobago House of Assembly Act does not speak of motions being sent down to Trinidad like that, to the Prime Minister. What the Tobago House of Assembly Act speaks of is that assembly laws made in the Parliament be sent to the Prime Minister or to the Cabinet via the Chief Secretary. If this is not an assembly law, I want to caution the Chief Secretary and caution the House. Do not look foolish by sending a motion down to Trinidad. That's like giving someone a half-picked duck. Let's complete the process. Let's sit down. Let's form a committee here. Let's discuss it. And let's get this thing going. Madam Presiding Officer, I want to close by inviting my colleagues on that side to do the honorable thing and include persons who are good at looking at law, persons from this side, all the political parties in Tobago, and let us create an avenue that will give all of Tobago a greater opportunity to participate in the amendments of this Tobago House of Assembly Act, or even our right to self-determination. That is a fundamental right. Do not send anything down to Trinidad and then ask them to fix it for us. We must fix it here first, satisfy with it, and then send it to Trinidad. Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer.